Um, this poem has a story. It woke me up on Erev Pesach. I went to bed late. I was sick, and it woke me up before 6 o'clock in the morning. I dreamt of writing it, and I woke up to write things down, and I tried to go back to sleep, and more lines kept coming. I've been reading a lot of Howl. I just gotten my new copy, and it crept into me in my sleep. It's called Women Howl, or MZ. I heard the howl of women in my sleep, writing hysterically to capture the cosmic connection of creators who hold up half the sky. On a night of bloody divided sea, crying, my God, why have you forsaken me to be the mythical rib piece of Eve? Who were ripped soul and ass by the endless gaze of gang rape, destroyed by the endless gaze of pity and shock and disbelief. Who got out of their beds after just getting inside to scribble half the night their first poetry slam, hands trembling and hearts pounding. Who dreamt lines of poems before dawn after staying up past midnight with maracas and kalimbas and rain sticks to put blonde and Jew-froed children to bed. Who ran away from men with 10-day-old babies and lived in women's shelters and did nails and massaged the hairy backs of burly Jewish men who said, no Arabs, please. Who quit jobs working with the mentally ill to sew and felt, only to end up cleaning houses to support 3 kids and her mother who was like a child. Who in the madness of dissociation lit fire to poetry and poetry books and watched the flames lap the sky and woke from the nightmare covered in blood. Who married men to have a home and cook and watch the children and get big cars and a big house, only to leave for better sex. Who got engaged and got sick with migraines and had CAT scans and MRIs and blood pressured only to call it off and the symptoms subsided. Who had to forgive the mothers who found their molesters and shipped daughters away for 7 years, then married the perpetrator. Who were taught to be virgins till marriage, didn't know how to use condoms, and in the worst 2 seconds of their lives found out you can get pregnant the first time. Who were pushed into walls by husbands, pushed into beds by husbands, and held in corners, forced to listen to dogmatic rantings on menstruation and maturity. Who sat in a corner holding themselves crying because they were afraid they would put their hands on their children's necks again. Who pushed pieces of fetus into public school toilets and peered into the nothing, wondering if it had happened or not. Who fell in love with women before it was sexy and held themselves for years on end, shaking in the solitude of unrequited love. Who orgasmed in kaleidoscopes of interracial teenage experimentations after breaking out of the window with faces stuffed in pillows so the parents wouldn't hear. Who walked for hours from Tayelet to Emek Rafaim to Jaffa to the Russian compound to go upstairs and kiss above the jazz after knowing each other for only 3 days. Who went to Marakia soup bars with Quebecois and Palestinians to get one of everything in the joint and shot glasses, discussing the possibility of a queer muse, what languages she speaks, insisting she must live in a different time zone. Who heard the cars passing through the night of their heads, begging for rest but seeing only blinding headlights. Who fell in love with the preacher's son, who was a Jehovah's Witness, turned Rastafarian, turned Hebrew, turned vagabond and homeless when his wife left him for a white man. Who swallowed diet pills and hated stretch marks and sucked it in for the camera and side-eyed skinny girls, hoping it's really better to have something to hold on to. Who watched their belly turn inside out and their breasts sag, believing this was surely a chastity belt against lust. Who got married and divorced and married and divorced and likes drinking and dancing and food because it's a happy place and will not move to Canada. Who were groped by religious cousins in corners who later held the babies of their perpetrators, wondering if they had told, would the soul be staring back at them. who slept with pens and notebooks, bound with red and with Whitman, hoping to catch visions of poetry in their dreams, who cried for the lost ash poems in the shadows of Hades, of Moshas, of teepees, of witch doctor midwives who brought life and slit wrists, who humped in confessional boxes in churches in Europe and felt each other up in the citadels of Islam, who covered their eyes in tears with unemployment office psychologists for the lost faith and dreams deferred, who dreamt of nights in Paris and film schools in the Big Apple but delayed because there is nowhere to sleep in New York City, who wrote poems to daddies in wheelchairs and walking sticks and hung up the phone in tears for the bricks of 1977 reincarnated into brand new high-rises, who tasted soft lips in abandoned cars in Ashkelon, in the ruins of Akko, in the fields of Bladensburg, and hadn't been right since, who said no, but he did it anyway, who said no, but he did it anyway, who watched the fata morgana of their husband's hand in disbelief transform into black eyes while his seed had taken root in their wombs, who mourned the failure of the feral Amazon woman, daughter of Artemis, when they were opened by the imperial cut for a child who refused time, who wanted to pimp, slap, jack up, beat down, and take out the next person who asked, "Are you pregnant?" because they couldn't be skinny enough, be skinny enough, be skinny enough, who sat up for white nights typing madly, shaking and scratching their necks like junkies because they had something to say, who loved Jerusalem because she's a whore and they are whores in certain circles, depending on who you talk to, who didn't go to the funeral, who didn't go to the wedding, trapped in marriage, parenthood, and just being here, who were dragged through the endless paper trail, hydra heads of Bitul Hlumi and Nisara Panim, fighting tooth and nail for a little blue book and a few shekels to close the month, only to be missing one incomprehensible document. Who vibrated, sobbing and radiant in surreal ecstasy of machinery, come in visions of lost bliss, and saw Jesus, Muhammad, Diana all in one night and declared, "I am the last prophet." Who followed a man to Israel, who followed a man to Israel, who followed a man to Israel, who were silenced by the minyan who said they shouldn't speak until the flaming sword of skeletons came flying out of their mouths, and they were transformed into the burning Shemira and the shimmering phoenix, who fornicated and adulterated and left the flock of the false shepherds of suppressed sexuality, fell out on their backs in a gospel of yes and found God, who went skinny dipping in the Mediterranean Sea, salty and starry-eyed, hallucinating that they had walked on water with Aphrodite, who howled at the moon on sand dune hilltops of Masada and called it training for the shamans of the desert, who climbed to the 13th floor of the matrix to drink from the fountain, holding mementos of a past life, only to discover they were nobody and an entire world. The howl does not come to these women from 9 to 5. It comes at midnight, 1:45 to 2 in the morning, and 1/2 live. It is an all-nighter due the next day. It is morning sickness in the afternoon. It is alcohol before 12. It is Jerusalem stone with bullet holes. It is a bad hair day for an interview with the gatekeepers to God. It is fierce, wild, and beautiful, like blood, orgasms, and birth. All in that order, and all out of breath. Woo!